Good morning. We're not wasting any time on today's video, none of that intro walking generic B-roll shots. Today I'm straight to it because my camera is set up right behind me here and I've got my composition lined up and I'm pretty happy with the composition. The only thing is I'm not particularly 100% certain on how the light is going to interact with that composition in scene. So you can see just behind me this beautiful solitary little hawthorn tree is the main focal point in this scene. And basically I am shooting a composition, a 16:9 crop that looks straight down this valley here, positioning the hawthorn tree out to the left of the scene and that beautiful valley view there off to the right of the scene. And I think there's a real nice balance across the scene. The only thing I'm not sure about is how the light is going to interact with this. So what I mean by this is the light currently is just behind the summit of this mountain here, but it's going to crest over the top of that hill probably in the next 15 to 10 minutes, I would say. You can actually see the light just up there about 30 or 40 meters behind me up that hill, so you can tell it's not very far away at all. But at the moment you can see it's illuminating this side of the valley here, but the problem is the shadow line, which is about there at the moment, is kind of intersecting halfway through my tree at the moment, so it's not kind of matching the vision I had in my head when I set out this morning. I thought the entire far side of the valley would be illuminated while this foreground and tree would remain in shade, but I don't know if it's actually going to turn out that way because obviously the light is just up there and it's going to be here imminently. So the question is, will that far side of the valley illuminate before the tree illuminates? I think that's going to be the key to this shot. As you can see, the light has arrived and I think I got the shot in the bag, but actually I find it amazing how as landscape photographers we can sometimes put ourselves in handcuffs. So we can become so fixated on one idea that we disregard other opportunities and different approaches right in front of our noses. And this morning is a good example of that. I was fixated on getting the tree and the foreground in shadow and the background and the far side of the valley down there illuminated. That was my vision for the scene and I think it could work nicely. However, the clouds that are blowing across the scene here and cutting out the light intermittently across this valley have changed the dynamic, because what's happening now is as the clouds blow that way, the sun illuminates the foreground here and the tree, but then it puts this mid part of the valley into shade. So what that means is it doesn't particularly matter that my foreground tree is illuminated because I'm getting great separation because the background valley behind it is put into shade by the clouds, and the clouds are so small that the far bit of the valley there is still illuminated. So this is actually working out potentially better, I think. I'm really not sure which image I prefer, the foreground illuminated or in shade, but I'm going to put both up on the screen shortly for you, and you can actually decide yourself. Let me know below in the comments which you prefer. Settings wise, I shot this at 70mm, and the reason for that is by coming back off the tree here, it compresses the scene and increases the size of the valley in the backdrop relative to the foreground tree, so it creates a lot more balance. If I was to shoot this tree a lot closer, the tree would look great, but that valley in the backdrop there would look quite small and it would give greater dominance to the sky as well, which isn't that interesting today, particularly down in that sort of area. It's very dull, flat, and there's not much definition or texture. So for me, coming back off the tree was definitely the way to go. So I shot this at 70mm, a 16:9 crop to cut out a lot of that dull sort of sky and the dull sort of dead bracken across this hillside here. And I shot it at f14 to give great depth of field. I don't want to be focus stacking or anything here, so I just focused in for the tree itself, and f14 will give me great sharpness right throughout the scene here. Circular polarizer on the front just to punch out the colours just that little bit. And shutter speed wise, I'm about 30th of a second, and I had to raise my ISO to 200 just so I can get that shutter speed up just that little bit, because there's quite a breeze today, and if I was to draw out that shutter speed any longer, I'm going to lose sharpness in my tree branches here because they are moving around. So by raising my ISO a little bit, it just allows me to speed up my shutter speed just that little bit. And the key thing for the composition here really was to make sure that the branches of that little hawthorn tree didn't protrude past the top of the hillside here into the sky. I wanted to make sure that they were within that boundary. So by coming back up the hillside here and zooming in with that 70mm focal length, that ensured that. Out of the two shots, I think I'd prefer the one with the tree illuminated. I just feel it has better depth and lighting interest throughout. But I'd be really interested to see what you think down in the comments. I'm pleased how the shot has turned out overall. It's nothing world conquering, but it's a nice little scene that's likely never been photographed before. Anyone who's been watching my channel for a bit of time will know that I love a good waterfall, so obviously I couldn't walk past this on the way back and not shoot it. So my camera is set up really low in quite a precarious sort of position above the flow of water here. Portrait orientation, shoot up to this cascade that you can see just behind me here, and it's a relatively simple scene, but something really captured my attention in it, and I don't 100% know what it is. I think it might be the autumnal colours in the dead bracken that surrounds this river either side of it. It really looks quite nice, I think, and it's a very minimalist, simple scene. But I think it's got a lot of potential. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to frame my composition so I get no sky in, because I just think it's going to be a distraction. The eye's going to go straight to that bit of sky right at the back of the scene there, and frankly there's nothing going on in that bit of sky, so why would I want to do that? So I frame my composition to cut out that sky entirely and just frame the cascade with the autumnal colours in the bracken either side of the river, and I think it works relatively well. Settings wise here, I'm shooting in at, let me check, well, that's a bit precarious, about 40mm here, and I've got a shutter speed dialed in of about 1/3 of a second, which will give really nice texture and detail in the water here. I'm also shooting at f11. I might be able to get this sharp within one exposure, but I'll probably also do a focus stack where I take an image down in the foreground here, midground and background, and then I can blend those if need be. ISO wise, I'm down at base ISO of 64 to maximise image quality, and I've got a circular polarizer on here which is really punching out those bracken colours really quite well. nice little scene, and I'm very glad that I didn't just walk past it. Found an absolutely incredible little scene here on the way back to the car. So you can see that the river flows in a really straight line here, and what's really quite exciting is that the riverbank either side is flanked by these oak trees that just go off into the distance, and the colours up in that canopy at the moment are absolutely amazing. And then if that wasn't enough, we're getting beautiful breaks of light. You can see one occurring just now that are coming in just from this side of the scene here. And what that is doing is it's illuminating and backlighting all of those beautiful colours in the canopy here without providing too much strong sunlight down on the actual river here. So I've got a feeling there's a really nice shot to be had here. So I think I'm going to have to do some wading out into the river, try and find foreground cascade or some rocks to build my foreground around, and the background should pretty much take care of itself. It looks incredible. I don't know if you can see that behind me, but the river here is very deep and quite fast flowing. It's close to going over the top of my wellies. So it would have been frankly reckless to do the photography and also try and vlog at the same time. I don't want to endanger my camera. It's pretty much exactly a year since I lost my D850 to the sea, so I'm not going to mark the anniversary by losing my Z7 to this river. So I focused entirely on getting the image, and then I've taken my camera down, and then I'm just going to explain on video after the fact exactly what I've done. I have to say that this scene behind me, wow, my favourite shot of the day I think, and maybe my favourite shot of this autumnal season. The colours were just incredible, those backlit leaves were amazing, and the lighting was so beautiful and soft in the scene, creating nice highlights right at the back of the scene, but less illumination at the front of the scene, which is always a very good thing because it means it will draw the viewer into the image very effectively. Settings wise, I shot this at 23mm. I focused down on this boulder here and put that in the left of the composition, and this kind of cascade kind of filled right across the foreground, and really I dedicated equal real estate to the river and the trees behind. I shot this at f11, shutter speed of about 1/3 of a second. Had to raise my ISO to 200 to achieve that shutter speed, but it will provide a lot more crispness in the actual moving water here. And I also had a circular polarizer on, which frankly at this time of year is pretty much the default. It punches out those colours so beautifully. I'm really pleased with this shot. I feel the backlit oaks delivered the best autumn colours I've seen this season. Plus, the avenue of oaks and the river create a really nice vanishing point, whilst the foreground water draws the viewer inwards towards this. A great end to a great autumn day. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.